Welcome back to Energetically You. I am chatting with Blaine today. He is an expert on all sorts of things that I love as well, such as the power of visualization, the importance of gaining clarity on what you want most, and we're going to talk about your brain's reticular activating system. I love that subject too, the power of imagination, and a bunch of really practical tips. So, to give you an idea of Blaine, he is a leading authority in personal implementation and consistency. He is America's only Chief Results Officer. We're going to dive into that story. I'm sure it's a good one. He's a habit master with documented streaks of 1,460 days in a row and counting. As a top LinkedIn connector, he has over 25,000 first-level connections. I believe that's getting close to the maximum. I think it might be as high as 35,000 or 40. Well, ask him. I'm sure he knows. And 1.7 million second level and, oh my goodness, 786 million thousand, that must be. Well, we're going to ask. He has a lot of LinkedIn connections, is the point. He's a LinkedIn genius. Blaine graduated from Purdue University and Stanford University's social entrepreneurship program. He's excited to share with us ways we can take control of our life by taking control of ourselves. So let's dive in. We're here again on Energetically You. I'm so excited to have a deep conversation with Blaine Oelkers. Welcome. How are you today, Blaine?
Megan, thank you for having me on. Honored to be here. And just want to say thank you for putting this podcast together. It's a lot of work to put these things together. And I just want to appreciate you for putting it together. And I hope we can add some value to the listeners' lives today. And I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, you have so many interesting zones of genius. So let's start off with Chief Results Officer. What is the story that you are the one and only? How did you coin the term? And tell us the journey.
So I had a few moments of dawning comprehension, as I like to call them, kind of pivotal moments that kind of change your life. And so I was really lucky in college. I went to Purdue University in Indiana, and I've always been a little bit, and maybe some of the listeners are too, a seeker of knowledge. How can I get better? What could I do? And I sent away for this audio cassette, kind of dating myself. This was back in the 80s. But I sent away for this audio cassette tape with the abridged version of this book called Think and Grow Rich. It was actually read by Earl Nightingale, who turned out to be kind of a mentor for me later, along with Jim Rohn. But in any case, so I got this and I really liked it. And then I bought the book. And so in college, I read this book, Think and Grow Rich. Now, riches, it could be like financial, but it was also riches of any kind, harmonious relationships, good health, like whatever you really desired. And it was a little bit of a formula to take your thoughts and turn them into reality. So realizing that, later I called it something else. I called it Waiteba. What you think about, you bring about. And so that really helped me to gain some success. It's kind of like the law of attraction with action, sort of like what you think about, you bring about. Like you gotta kind of do something to help the universe along, I think. But anyway, I had some good success with that. And actually, I met my wife at college. We've been married 30 years now, so that's been successful.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. But this other moment, which led me to kind of becoming the Chief Results Officer, this other moment of dawning comprehension was my son was 1 year old, and I was working a tech job. I was my degree's in computer science, and so I was working for this company. I had been away for 4 or 5 days, and I got back, and my son Bo was kind of giving me the cold shoulder. I'm like, "What is this?" And I said, "Beth, what's going on? Why is he giving me the cold shoulder?" And she said, "Well, you were gone so long, he kind of forgot who you were." And I was just like, what? I mean, that hit me like in the heart pretty bad that night. And as I went to bed, I realized both my parents worked. So I came home to an empty house many times. and was kind of scared. And anyway, I had all these thoughts, and I made what I call a clarifying decision that night that I was going to work from home, like no matter what. So I had to get out of my own job. I had to find some way to work from home. So I ended up starting 2 businesses, and it took a year, but a year later, I broke free from the job, and then I never had to go back again. So that was like 28 years ago. So for me, what happened was then I could kind of pursue what I really wanted in life. And I started a company called Selfluence, which is the art and science of influencing yourself. So I'm probably my genius zone is personal implementation, how to help people kind of get themselves to do the right things that bring high value. And so I started doing that for a bunch of people, and for mastermind groups, specifically mastermind groups of business owners, mostly. And they started calling me Chief Results Officer. I go, oh, that's a cool title. And I feel like, hey, that's what God wants me to do, is to help people kind of take control of their lives by taking control of themselves and getting results. And so then I realized no one else had that. So I went to the U.S. Patent Office, and you can get a trademark, a register, the R with the circle, which that means you mean business. It took like 8 months, but I got that. So nobody else in America can use that term without kind of licensing it through me. So anyway, that's how I became America's only Chief Results Officer. But my real thing is, how can I help people kind of take control of their lives by taking control of themselves? That's really what I like to help people with.
Yeah, I love that story. Well, we definitely have a lot in common. So let's talk specifically about the power of visualization and how you help people really. I'm sure there's like the visualization, but to your point, it comes with action as well, not just thinking and imagining.
Yeah. I think it starts with some type of clarity, right? And so how do people kind of get clarity for what they want, or how can they get clarity of maybe why they're here? And I find that when people kind of align with like a really deep, authentic clarity, that they feel really good about what they're doing. Right. And so, and they would keep, they really get excited. There's not a lack of energy or excitement or enthusiasm for what they want to do. But how do you discover that stuff? It's not easy, but a lot of people who do things really well in life, that's what happened to them, is they discovered, sometimes at a very early age, but they discovered, what that thing was for them, like why they're here. And so there's a few exercises we like to walk people through to try to figure some of that out. One I like is your 120th birthday party, right? So you imagine that you're attending your own. I used to be 100, but now with advances in science and all that stuff, we're going to 120. So you're at your 120th birthday party. You got the lean muscle mass, you got full mental capacity, you're doing great. But you're sitting there and you're watching this party unfold, and people are coming up to the microphone there, and a lot of people are there, and they're saying stuff like, what does your family say about you? What does, the people you work with say about the community? And you're kind of living through this view of your life, at this big party. Right. And what music is playing, and what was your favorite music? And you kind of take in all the sights, sounds, feelings, emotions of all the 5 senses there, and try to put that down on paper. Now, sometimes you could just record yourself saying it, right, and then have that transcribed. But in that visualization of that birthday party and living it, you're gonna figure it out. And I'd also say do it a couple times. Like the first time, it's not as in depth, but when you come back to it, it kind of gets richer and deeper. Right. So that's one. The other one that I like to use is the Powerball test. And so hopefully you've heard of the Powerball lottery, which is this crazy big lottery. It's hundreds of millions of dollars. And so the way that visualization works is that, let's say you won the Powerball. So you win $500 million. You're the only winner. Now the government's going to take, maybe they take half, but you still have a couple $100 million. And what happens then is you party, you do all the traveling, you see the world, you buy the mansions, you take care of all your friends, you get a new car for your chief results officer. I mean, you take care of all that stuff, and you do that for a year. Right. But after a year, you've been everywhere you want to be. You bought all the stuff you wanted to buy. You still have $100 million in the bank, and you wake up a year later, nothing to do. What would you do? And it's in that moment when I do this in like a big workshop, it's funny that more than 90% of the answers, when people sit with that just in silence for a minute or two, is they all say, I would help people blank. Now the blank is different for everybody, but it comes back to when you have unlimited resources, there is like this deep, seated thing inside of us to serve other people based on our own experiences. And that's typically where people will end up. It's in the service of other people. And so that's another great exercise, because then that starts to unlock for you what it is you want to do. Now, maybe you're in a position you can't do that full time, but you can start to add that into your life, and you're going to feel really good when you do that. And my wife and I often say, does it pass the Powerball test? Like, if I did win the Powerball last weekend, I would still be here with Megan doing this podcast, because I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Right. And so that Powerball test is a big one. The last one, if you do have your own business, there's something called the Wall Street Journal article visualization, where this one you actually write out, like, sometime in the future, 3 years, 5 years, the Wall Street Journal or whatever magazine of choice, they do an article about you, and what's the headline? So you just write the headline. Then if you want to go deeper, you write a subheadline, you could outline the article. And some people actually write the whole article about what are they saying about you? What did you do? How did you do it? And then kind of through reverse visualization, you can kind of move yourself all the way back to where you are today. And what are some of the action steps you need to take to start moving in that direction? So anyway, that's the big, those are some mind expanding ways to just think about getting clarity, laser focus about what you want most. And
So sorry. All right, we're back. I lost power. There was a big rainstorm outside. I was just sending you a message. Anyway,
I got through. Well, no, I got through what I was going to talk about, and the recording kept going. And then when you dropped, and then it said recording stopped, and then you came back on and it said recording starting again. So I think you got all that.
Amazing. All right.
So now, do you use the video or just the audio part?
Just the audio.
Oh, okay. Then I went off to that. Yeah. Okay. So basically, I just kind of went through, I don't know where I lost you, but I went through these few exercises about visualization. And then I talked a little bit about Think and Grow Rich and how that book talked about that you should really figure out what you want most. Did you hear that part, or?
I got the 3 things, but if you brought Think and Grow Rich up again, I didn't hear that part.
Okay. So I just talked about, after I had some success, I bought one of the original 5,000 copies. And when I did that, I opened it up and it was different. It had some instructional pages, but the first page said, what do you want most? And basically it said, before you begin reading this book, spend a little time, go into airplane mode. It's not just for the airplane. Get away from distractions, maybe get into nature and really figure out, what direction you want to go in. What do you want most? And kind of bring that to the reading of the book. So that's where it all froze. And then I kind of stopped and I was waiting for you to say something, and then it went down.
All right. Well, we're back. So thank you for all that. And let's keep going. Hopefully it's like it's still raining, but
we'll work it out.
Mexico.
We have to do something else. We'll figure it all out. No worries.
Okay. So I really want, if you don't mind for a moment, to go back. And can you walk us through the process? Like, first of all, I absolutely love that you've been working from home for so long, like long before all of these trends to make it a lifestyle choice, right? But walk us through the process of you at that moment going from tech. I mean, did you initially just do your tech, find a way to do your existing job from home, or did you pivot immediately at that point to do something else from home?
Yeah, so a good question. So what I did is I did both at the same time. Now that almost cost me my marriage, but we made it through. But it was a very crazy time because the job was like 50 hours a week, and I was into kind of technical sales for a computer company. But I'd also done some contract programming where basically there's no benefits involved. You're just paid a straight hourly rate to develop software code for computers and programs. And so I got together with a friend and we started kind of an agency that would find the computer programmers jobs. And at that time, maybe they would make $40 an hour, but we would get paid $47 or $50 an hour, and we would kind of make the split there. Now we had to front the money they'd want to be paid every 2 weeks, and the contractor might not pay us for a month or two, or sometimes quarterly. But in any case, so that was one business, helping people get those tech jobs, which we knew how to do that because we had done that ourselves. And then the other company I started was basically selling a health product, and just kind of did that on the side. I really liked it, and just started selling that, and was able to build that up at the same time. And so both those two businesses kind of got me going and got me free. And then I've just kind of stayed in helping people get results kind of ever since. So now I help a lot of organizations do it. And if I'm helping an organization, I just get a small little fee per member to help the members keep getting results. So that works out well for me. It's not really time for dollars. Then I also run super results days, which are kind of concentrated days of doneness, kind of, get all the loose ends done in one day. So that's kind of fun. And that's been a lot more fun with Zoom, to be honest. And then I just have programs, designed kind of for business owners to help make sure they have accountability, they're getting results, and that they're winning. Like there's an interesting ratio of like winning to losing, and different things have different ratios. When I was teaching my kids tennis, that became the kind of the family sport. I realized that it was like 70-30. So if the kids were winning more than 70% of the time, like 90% of the time, then they weren't learning anything, right? So I had to put them in a tournament where maybe they have to play up in age or something like that. But the opposite was also true. If they were losing more than 30% of the time, 40% or 50%, they would lose interest. And they were like, they don't want to do it. They don't want to go to practice. They just want to kind of hide and get away from it. So there's a magic ratio there. For sports, I think it was 7-30. But for me, I like to win early, win often. It's very energizing to me. Like done is the engine of more. So I'm at like a 90-10. Like if I'm winning all the time, then I'm obviously not stretching. I'm not growing, right? But I like to win 9 out of 10 times. And that 10th time that I don't win, it's some goal I didn't meet, but it was something that stretched me a little bit.
I like that analogy. So tell us a little bit more about, or what's the timeline on when you became an expert on LinkedIn?
So LinkedIn, my kind of ideal client is a business owner. And so for many years, I focused just in the Phoenix area. And so I figured out some techniques to grow my connections very quickly in LinkedIn. And so, I started like everybody else with no connections. And first thing you want to do is you want to get to 500. So then it says like 500 plus, like then people kind of don't know, how, if you have under 500, it's very, you can see it very easily. So you want to get to 500, but then I wanted to get to 1,000, then 5,000, then 10,000, then 20,000, then 25,000, and basically found a way to connect with the right kind of people. And that's been really helpful for me. And whenever I need anything now, I can kind of go to my LinkedIn network and find somebody that does it, like even like a local photographer or a financial planner or whatever within my network, typically locally. I have somebody. And the Rapid Connect method that I used was to do searches, but only in my own city and only who's on my second level. So it's someone that there's only one person between me and them. And typically all three of us live in the same city. So I had a high, kind of connect rate. Because if a lot of people say, I don't know that person, I don't know, then LinkedIn kind of puts you in the LinkedIn jail, which I was put in the LinkedIn jail for a little while, a few times. But it's, you really want to try to do it, as organically as possible. But LinkedIn is great for kind of a professional network. It's one of the best.
Yeah. I like that. that strategy and the LinkedIn jail. That's funny. Let's talk a little bit about formulating an effective bring about statement.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about this concept of Waiteba, what you think about, you bring about. And so we talk about constructing a bring about statement. And I have a TEDx talk where I do talk about this concept of what you think about, you bring about, and how do you program yourself kind of for success? Like once you decide what you want, what do you do? And one of the things that has worked really well for me personally, and for a lot of people who have come up to me, sometimes it's a month later, sometimes it's years later, but they said, "Hey, Blaine, that one thing that you did to have me focus on my bring about statement, that really worked." And basically, when I talk about this in detail in my TEDx talk, but it's the idea of programming this thing called the reticular activating system. Some people call it the RAS, and it's a little part of your brain in the back of your head, and it's kind of the executive secretary, and it decides what goes into your conscious mind. So right now, there's probably like 1,000 things your brain is running: your blood and your blood pressure, and the the pH of your blood, and your circulation, and your breathing, and it's hearing stuff and it's seeing stuff. I mean, you would go crazy if you had to process all that in your conscious mind. So your subconscious mind's running all that stuff. But how do you determine what that RAS, who's kind of has access to everything, how do you influence that to kind of hand you the right stuff, right? And an example I give is my son, and everyone kind of can relate to this example. You get a new car. In this case, my son got an Acura TL maroon color. And then for the next 2 or so weeks, I see this car everywhere. It pulls up right next to me. It's over there. It's over here. And I'm like, wait a second, are all these people kind of conspiring against me? Which was not the case, but it was the case that my RAS, my reticular activating system, now was looking for those things, right? And so if you can program that RAS, you can make things happen. I talked about, when I bought the original book, Think and Grow Rich, like one of the original copies, it said, what do you want most? And then, so I started programming my RAS I wanted my business at the time was worth maybe about $300,000, but I wanted to be worth $1 million. And what was interesting is I was in a room, and then somebody talked about needing to sell their business. And I knew that I could be a good candidate to merge that business into mine. And that's how I ended up, reaching my goal in maybe like 5 months instead of 5 years, was again, because that RAS was tuned in. So one easy way to program the RAS is to use your smartphone. And so the average person, somewhere between 60 and 160 times a day, you see your unlock screen. So what I had people do in my TED Talk was actually take a picture, of this card that I had them fill out with something they wanted to bring about in their life, and take a picture of that and make that the unlock screen. So now consciously you see it, but after a few days or maybe a week, then kind of your subconscious is seeing it all day long, and it's programming the RAS. So some people will put something just like they want to be more self-confident, and they'll say, Blaine, after 2 or 3 weeks, I was feeling more self-confident. Other people will put kind of a bigger goal on there. One guy wanted to write a screenplay. And so 2 years later, he called me up and says, Blaine, I'm changing my unlock screen. Finally, after 2 years, I wrote the screenplay, right? So it's kind of big things and little things. But back to original question, this bring about statement is, what do you want to bring about? And you want it to be as specific as possible, right? So you want, the more clear you can be, the easier it is for your mind and for the RAS to feed you the right stuff, right? So you're going to be tuning into the right station. So a level of detail, by what time, like right now, I started a new part of my business, and by November 15th, I'm serving 334 business owners, right? So it's very specific. It's got a date. Some people call it a SMART goal: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and with a timetable. Now I say smarter goals. I had an ER in the end, E meaning energizing, like it should be energizing, for you, and it needs to be recorded. So it could be recorded in your own voice or written down. I like to write mine down. I have a daily kind of log. I have a daily day design sheet. And every day I handwrite. There's some magic to handwriting, especially even if you do it in cursive, it's even better. But there's a magic to kind of writing that out, every day and really pushing it onto the into your RAS, but very specific. And again, it should be energizing, for you. And I tell people, this, what you think about, you bring about. Start small, right? Start with some small things. It's like going to the gym. Let's build up a little bit. Like you might say, hey, there's this new movie coming out, or the Academy Awards had Coda was the film that won, and you want to see that movie. Let's bring that about. So I want to see this movie. By when do you want to see it? Who do you want to see it with? How could you see it? Can you get it, online? And you'll start to just formulate a plan kind of naturally from that, and bring that about. And then, do something a little bigger, then something a little bigger. But again, I like the win early, win often, so that you kind of gain some momentum and some energy behind what you're doing. If you're failing a lot, then kind of like we did in the tennis, you got to nano size, you got to make it smaller or chunk it down to some small enough thing that you can win. Like I help people with, let's say they say, I want to start a new exercise program. I'm going to exercise 30 minutes a day. And then a week later, they exercise twice. I'm like, okay, you're losing too much. Let's drop it to 10 minutes. Now, 10 minutes, maybe they can do that. If they can't do that, then I'll say, look, do five push-ups before you get in the shower. We're going to count that. We got to get to winning and then kind of build up from there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on all those fronts. And I like your ER of smarter. Those are great. So let's talk a little bit about some of your personal daily documented streaks. Like what are the things, I'm guessing maybe journaling or what you just mentioned is one of them, but is there anything else that for you, it's like a daily habit?
Yeah. So habits, like when you're looking to get results, habits is a big part of it. And we're kind of creatures of habit, right? And so I have a thing that I can share right now with everybody. And it's called the 21-second habits. So these are habits that you can create basically any new habit in 21 seconds, not 21 days. So if they told you it takes 21 days to create a new habit, somebody lied to you. I am sorry. I apologize. You don't need 21 days. And the thing, like this company that I'm powered by, say I'm powered by Self-Fluence, all the stuff, you don't need anything else. Like everything's within reach. You already know how to do it. You're already a master at it. So let's say you wanted to create a new habit. Let me tell you, I'll tell you two different stories here. One is my wife, Beth, she used to have, I'm glad this is past tense, have almost daily migraines. And so when she went to the doctor for these migraine headaches, stuff wasn't working. And they said, okay, you have to keep this headache log. And the headache log was like pretty detailed. Like, what did you eat? What was the weather? What do you think the triggers were? And all this stuff. And she could do it for a day or two. Then she'd lose the log. She'd forget to do it. Then she'd have a migraine. I'd ask her where the log was. Bad move on my part. I learned quickly not to do that. But in the end, what we did is we realized something. I realized that something that my wife does that she's a habit master at, was brushing her teeth twice a day. She never missed that, ever. So we took the headache log and we put the toothbrush and the toothpaste on top of the headache log with a pen. And so every morning and every night, she does the dentist recommended 2 minutes of brushing, and she would fill out the log. And here's the first key to the 21-second habits, she linked it to a habit that she was already a master at. Right? So she was a master. There's no willpower required for her to brush her teeth. And so she did it for like 90 days in a row, went back to the doctors, and things improved dramatically. Now she might have a migraine once every couple months. It's very, very rare now. So cool. So that's part one, is linking to something you're already a habit master at. So I had my longest documented streak is over 4 years. It's like 1,488 days, I think maybe today was. And there were two things I wanted to do every day, every morning, actually. One is I had a Bible app and I wanted to jump in that. And the other thing was I realized I wanted to take a mind shower every day. Now, people take a physical shower, but I wanted to wash my mind and kind of take out the head trash every day. And I use an app called Headspace. There's Calm, Headspace, Insight Timer. There's a lot of great apps for this. But I wanted to do that every single day. And I thought to myself, okay, what do I do every single day? Well, every single morning, what I do is I pick up my smartphone right after I wake up. Sometimes the alarm is going off on the smartphone. So there's no willpower required for me to pick up my smartphone. So what I did is I moved all the apps off the first page, and I just put those 2 apps in there. And I said, look, when I open my phone up, I can turn the alarm off, but then I'm not allowed to touch anything else in my phone until I do those 2 things. Now, this is the second key to the 21-second habit. 1 is you link it to something you're already habit master at, but 2 is you surf the urge to want to do something. Like when I wake up and I look at my phone, like I want to check my email, text messages from the kids. Maybe I want to check, stocks, what's going on in the world. Did any orders come in? Like I'm so excited. I have this really want to check what's going on. Right. And so I surf that urge and I make sure that I do those 2 new habits first. And so that's the thing that those apps kind of log your streaks. And so now they're kind of fully documented. But those 2 things, link it to something you're already doing, and then surf some type of urge. I was just working with an attorney and she wanted to do, I love next day planning. Like I never let a day end without planning the next one, but she was like not making a plan for the day. And it was kind of chaotic. And I said, look, you at least have to make a little plan. I said, what's the first thing you do every morning? And you don't even have to think about it. It happens. She says, well, I have a cup of coffee. I said, do you ever go morning without a coffee? She says, no, like I'm a bad person without my coffee. And so I said, good. Whenever you have coffee, before you take the first sip of coffee, you have to start the daily plan, the daily list, right? Now you can make it while you drink your coffee if you want. But she surfed that urge for coffee to get the thing done. Right. So it's surfing the urge, but then linking to something that you're already a habit master at. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, those are all such tactile advice. I love it. And I love all of how many of your tips and tricks are really integrated into the reality of how digital we are. Like they're in your cell phone. It's brilliant. So let's talk quickly about imagination before we wrap it up. I want to be respectful of your time, but you've given us so much already. I'm curious your thoughts on the importance of how to keep imagination alive and how and why.
Yeah. I think, I think it was Albert Einstein talked about imagination and the difference between knowledge and imagination. And he said something like, knowledge is all we know, right now, but imagination is all we'll ever know. It's like totally expansive, mm-hmm. And they're in Think and Grow Rich, he's got a whole chapter on imagination, which he calls the workshop of the mind. And if you keep a healthy imagination going, you're never stuck. Right? Because you can come up with another idea or a new idea or a different way to look at it. Right. So I think it's important to kind of foster that imagination. And I like to do it both in, a practical ways, but then also in intuitive ways. Right. So figuring out how do you keep your imagination, fresh and expansive. And so a couple of different ways that I like to use. One is I do like to use other people, right? So when you mastermind with someone else, I think that's really helpful, especially on an imagination front. For example, if you and I were working on a project, you might come up with 5 ideas on your own and I come up with 5. But if we come together, if you hear my 5 and I hear your 5, we might come up with another 10, 20. Or 30 ideas, right? So 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, it equals 3, 4, or 5. So I think the power of the collective genius is really powerful in regards to imagination. Also, getting quiet and kind of tapping into whatever you believe spiritually. I think there is there's a vibrational energy world out there that has a lot of creativity, to it. The arts, I think, are very creative. So for me, when I'm doing kind of deep work or deep focus, there's a certain type of music that I listen to. I find that to be really, really helpful. And then I also, just like you said earlier, I like technology. And so you can go online and you can go to a random number generator. You can just type that in, and what it does is there's this website. It's all about random. It might be random.org, but they have generators of anything. Like it can generate numbers. But what I use in some of our brainstorming sessions, it can generate nouns. Like you can say, just give me 5 random nouns. and it'll give you like elephant, sun, zoo, but when you see those nouns, that your neurons are connected to other neurons that bring in some real creative ideas. So there's ways to even use technology to kind of jumpstart. You can say, give me a random sentence, give me a random paragraph. But anyway, there's a lot of power now in technology. But I think keeping yourself creative, surrounding yourself with other people that you kind of can harmoniously be creative with. Not everybody, is helpful in your creativity, but picking those people and associating with them, I think is really helpful. And it opens up the possibilities. That's what I like is you're never stuck when you can just come up with a new plan. If one plan doesn't work, come up with a new one. Use your imagination.
Oh, I'm so glad I asked. Well, you've given us so much value, Blaine. Thank you. And I can see why you have so many connections on LinkedIn. You're just such a genuine, giving person. And tell us, how can people connect with you? Where do you want to direct them if they want to reach out? Besides LinkedIn, of course.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. The easiest one is just to get a copy of my TEDx talk is BlaineTEDx.com. So BlaineTEDx.com. You can opt in there, get my TEDx talk, then you'll get to know me, get some of my articles. And then, if there's any way I can serve you, I'm happy to do it. Amazing.
Well, we'll link that up in the show notes. And anything else you want to leave with our listeners? Any parting last?
Well, I mean, two things. I said at the top, thank you for putting this together. And I do think, Megan, that your show, you're putting it on the internet, it will have kind of a results ripple. And I bet you someone not yet born will get some benefit from one of these shows. That might be 20 years from now, it might be 30 years from now, but someone will get benefit from this. So I appreciate you having me on. And I will end with this. The bad news is time flies. The good news, you're the pilot. So pilot that next day well, and it'll turn into a good week, which will be a good month, which will be a good year, which will be a good life.
I like that. Well, thank you so much for everything. And I look forward to connecting with you more in the future. Thanks. Have a good evening.
Thanks.